A lot of people are in scramble mode right now for their fantasy football team because they're like, oh, crap, I got to get this going or I'm not going to make the playoffs.
Yep.
So who should you add to your team? So let's rank these. We've got 7 players here, and we're going to pick our favorites. I'm going to be super nice, and I'm going to let you pick the first one here.
Oh, you are so...
And you're going to pick my guy, and I'm going to be mad about it.
So kind. I'm taking Jonathan Taylor here. I think he's the screaming buy here.
Never doing this again.
You're so nice. I really appreciate you doing that. Incredibly unselfish. You were such an example for the fantasy community. Jonathan Taylor, last few weeks, since his first game back in week 5, Tennessee, 15% snap share. Jacksonville, 42% snap share. Cleveland, 50%. New Orleans, 61%. It's just going up and up and up and up and up. Yes, did we think Jonathan Taylor was going to have a bigger week against New Orleans than he ended up having? Absolutely, we did. It didn't happen because he had 12 carries for 95 yards, 85 of those, which came in the first half or first quarter.
82 in the first quarter.
And then they just decided to stop using him.
Shane Steichen was like, I don't know who Jonathan Taylor is.
He still has a leg.
Still got a leg.
So we gotta monitor that and give the ball to Zach Moss and give him the red zone carries. People are going to flip, and I mean flip, if they aren't already flipping and freaking out about Jonathan Taylor not getting the red zone carries because Zach Moss took him and he stole the touchdown. If you look at the splits, if you look at what Zach Moss did yesterday, first, I mean, more than half of his production came from one run. He had like a 40-yard run. So that was like 2/3 of his rushing yards. And then legitimately half of his points came from that one touchdown run. So if JT takes that touchdown away from Zach Moss, we're not even having a conversation because it's a 20-point to 6-point difference.
Sure.
At the end of the day. And I think that's what we're going to end up getting on a more consistent basis through the second half of the season. I mean, you're looking at that snap share increase and you're like, oh yeah, it's definitely going up. It's not like we're plateauing or getting to a point where JT and Zach Moss are just going to perpetually split the ball evenly for the rest of the year. I really think this is a steady incline. And JT, when you watch him run the ball, has gotten better every single week as well. He's starting to look more and more like himself. I think the Colts know what they are this year, and that's not a contender for the playoffs. So they really do. I mean, after paying Jonathan Taylor to a 3-year extension, they are wanting to be careful with him. And I do respect them for that. But ultimately, from a fantasy perspective, there's going to be a lot of people who do freak out because of this. And I would say pump the brakes now. Pump the brakes because, yeah, Zach Moss got 2 of the 3 goal line carries for the running backs in this game. JT did get 1, though. Early downs, Jonathan Taylor had the majority. All plays total, Jonathan Taylor had the majority. Short yardage, Moss actually had 3 to Jonathan Taylor's 1. And then on third downs, Jonathan Taylor had more opportunities than Zach Moss did, actually twice that of Zach Moss. I think it's just going to get smaller and smaller, those opportunities for Moss.
All right, so I get second pick, and you know I'm going to take our guy. There's one other guy you would definitely take here. I'm going to take Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, my goodness, man. He's always a buy. Buy Chris Godwin. It's literally our channel motto.
Yep.
But Chris Godwin going into last week was 3.5 touchdowns under expected. One of the biggest numbers I've seen so far. His first touchdown of the week was on Thursday night, and now Chris Godwin in his last 3 games since the bye week, 13 points, 12 points, 17 points. And why did he jump from his 10, 11, 12-point floor to 18 points? Because 12 plus 6 is 18. It makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Give me some.
Not to mention, I mean, Chris Godwin getting consistently 7 targets. There was a tweet that we saw this week, and can you tell me the statistics again? Because you were the one that told me.
Oh, my gosh.
And it talked about Chris Godwin as a consistent fantasy producer, and it's crazy. So, again, if you're...
One of my favorite tweets of the year.
If you have... Now, he's really like that. If you have holes on your roster, if you have flex guys that are giving you inconsistent production, just play Chris Godwin and know that he's going to give you this production because he's done it for how many years now and how many games? This is ridiculous. Go ahead.
Yeah, so 10-plus fantasy points in 49 of 60 games. That's over 80% hit rate on 10-plus points. Below 7 fantasy points just twice in 60 games. That's 5 combined seasons. That obviously excludes the games where he left early with injuries, which was, I think, only a couple more. He is on his way to his 5th consecutive season, on track for his 5th consecutive season with 85-plus receptions and 1,000 yards, or a full season pace of it. I mean, shout out to David J. Gautieri. That was a nice tweet there.
Yeah, that guy's an interesting guy. But you do have 2 of the most consistent fantasy receivers ever on the same team in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And we saw at the beginning of the season, it was Mike Evans, and everybody's like, oh, Mike Evans and Baker, whoa. And we're like, yeah, sell Mike Evans. After week 1, we were like, sell him.
Sell him.
And It was the right call, and I think Chris Godwin will continue to get an even amount of production with Mike Evans. I think you'll continue to see Chris Godwin produce at a very consistent level, and I think he's pretty cheap right now because he's always cheap.
Very cheap.
Always cheap, so Chris Godwin's my pick.
I'm going to do it.
Do it.
I'm going to do it. Justin Jefferson is going to be my third buy here. And why would you say this, Nathan? Why would you ever dare say that Justin Jefferson is a buy after the Kirk Cousins injury?
Good pick, though.
That's my reason right there. That is the exact reason why, because everyone is going to lose their minds like I am right now that Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles and that the target volume is going to go down and that they're going to be a shell of what they were with Kirk Cousins offensively. All of that can be true, and J. Jeff can still destroy you and still score a ridiculous amount of points. Yeah, will his ceiling be as high as what it was previously? Maybe not. Maybe even probably not.
Likely not.
Likely not.
Probably
Regardless, I don't care. If we're freaking out about this situation, everyone else is freaking out even more. And you have to trust the talent over the situation when you were talking about Justin Jefferson. Debatably the best wide receiver in the NFL right now.
All right, let me play devil's advocate.
Okay, Mr. Devil Advocate.
There's a possibility they don't bring him back this season because of the injury.
Yep.
I think it would be smart for them to sit him. Now, whether or not they do that, I'm not sure. And there's an equally valid side there that says, why wouldn't they? It's true. And Justin Jefferson's going to want to play. I just think it's possible. I think now that they have a not great record, now that they've lost their starting quarterback and really don't have a very clear backup plan.
Yep.
I think that's the pushback I think people could give, and they would be onto something.
Yeah.
There.
So,
but I think Justin Jefferson would have been my pick. So
with that question mark, which is absolutely legitimate, what happens to Justin Jefferson's value because of that?
Yeah,
it goes down even more.
Which is exactly, it plays into your point that they're zigging, we're going to zag.
And at that point, look, if you are a desperate team and you are, especially towards the end of the season when he's about to come back potentially from IR, and you're just hoping that you have to bet on the ceiling and the upside if he does come back. And if you're getting him at a discount price for a potential wide receiver, this is exactly why we invested in Cooper Kupp this offseason. This is exactly why he was a buy, even though there were so many really shady questions surrounding Cooper Kupp during his whole hamstring issue.
Right.
Remember?
Yes.
And we were like, it doesn't matter to a point because Cooper Kupp is so cheap right now. And we know what he is when he plays and when he's playing with Matt Stafford. And he ended up coming back, and it was worth it for you guys that invested in him because he's doing really well, doing what Cooper Kupp does.
Well, to be fair, the last 2 weeks he hasn't really done very well.
Yeah, but...
And now Matt Stafford's hurt. So we could end up being wrong about that, actually.
Sure, but it's
the
still...
one game, though, was great.
Yeah, the 3 games were great.
He really hasn't had 3 good games. He hasn't, but at the same time, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying, like, I think people could argue that we were wrong because he had 2 games. He had the 20 points, 27 points, and then he's had 6 points each of the last 2 games. So if Matt Stafford's hurt, like,
but again, we always said that was a risk.
You're right,
and that's always a risk with any quarterback. You could have said that about Joe Burrow with the calf injury. Why were people still taking Jamar Chase second overall consistently, even though Jamar Chase could potentially miss the first quarter of the season with that calf injury? It was because you knew that the reward outweighed the risk. The reward with Justin Jefferson, if he comes back and plays, will massivers outweigh the risk.
Even without Cousins.
Of potentially the sunk costs.
You have, like, elite receivers, QB-proof elite receivers, and then there's, like, Justin Jefferson. Yeah. Doesn't matter who's throwing the ball.
Are we freaking out about the Vikings offense because Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles? Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Absolutely, we're freaking out.
Yes, 100%. I'm going to go next year, and with everything that happened this weekend, I'm going to go Kyler Murray.
Yes, sir.
Because you lost Matt Stafford potentially. Kirk Cousins. Desmond Ridder was hurt at a time. Tyrod Taylor. Now Daniel Jones has been terrible. Quarterback's a mess, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Even if Kyler doesn't have the rushing upside right away that he did, which he won't, we anticipate that. Even as a passer, Kyler's been fairly good. There's a reason Kyler was a top 5 quarterback pretty much every fantasy season he's healthy. It's because as a passer, he's been fairly decent. I think he's a better passer than any quarterback they have on the roster there. And they do have the weapons, at least some weapons, to support Kyler Murray being a viable fantasy quarterback. He's off the injury report, completely off the injury report.
Completely.
He could start as early as this week. And if it's not this week, it's probably next week. This is assuming he doesn't get traded in the next 24 hours. So by the time this video comes out, we'll know.
Please get traded to the Vikings. Please. We're begging.
Here, I'll put this in there in case he gets traded. Can you believe he got traded to this team? But
It's not
just be a Cardinals
it's probably
logo.
not going to happen.
Yeah.
Look, with Kyler Murray, to all of you fantasy football noobs who haven't played with him yet, just a reminder what Kyler Murray is capable of doing over the last 3 years. 2020, 24.5 points per game. 22 points per game in 2021 and 19 points per game in 2022, which was honestly a pretty down year for him where he didn't look too great. That is his floor.
Yep. That is absolutely his floor.
He's crazy. He's
So,
good.
Kyler's
man.
off the board.
He's
There you
good. Debo Samuel is going to be about as cheap as can be coming off of this injury. The Niners 3-game skid, man. So, am I worried about it? No, not really. Do I think Debo Samuel coming back will help them and kind of bolster that offense while they try to make another nice run for the playoffs and for the division? Yeah, I do think so. And once Debo comes back, we know this with Debo Samuel. Every single year, he's going to get banged up. He's going to miss some games. People are going to get low on him. Then he's going to come back and he's going to show out again. The style of football that he plays is just very... It's very tough, and it results in him getting injured here and there. Would I say he's injury prone? No, because he's not missing like a ridiculous amount of time. He's just missing some games here and there. And with him in his production, yeah, going into the injury, he was already banged up in weeks 5 and 6, only had 11 points and 1 point. He barely played at all, I think, in the Cleveland game in week 6 anyways, but he has been pretty solid when fully healthy this year. I forget, who did they play where he just like went out of his mind and outproduced Ayuk, and he like ran the ball and was catching the ball like classic Debo. I think it was on a Monday night game and they were killing it. Anyways, it was great. It's like prime classic Debo. We'd love to see it. This is his upside. We know what his upside is. There isn't much to say here outside of the fact that we know how Kyle Shanahan likes to utilize Debo when he's healthy and when he plays. And there is like seriously, there are a few wide receivers that have a higher ceiling on a week-to-week basis than Debo Samuel. And that's what you're looking for. That's what you want come playoff time in fantasy football.
So when you're evaluating, like, and when I'm looking at these guys and trying to figure out who I'm going to pick, I'm like weighing two things here. Number one, what's their price? How much do they cost? Yeah. And number two, how safe are they? Yeah. And based on the guy we're picking last year, you can tell, and you can tell all your friends, that we do not have take lock because I'm going to take Aaron Jones here. Yeah. And Aaron Jones, the reason I like Aaron Jones is because of the price specifically. And he's had 8 points in each of the last 2 games. Obviously not great. Aaron Jones did say he's feeling about the healthiest he's been since week 1. I do think Aaron Jones does pick it up because this is a bad offense on a bad team. Typically, these PPR running backs, these receiving running backs, tend to get a lot of dump offs. Alvin Kamara is a good example of that. And I think Aaron Jones is going to start to get that volume too. But you can get Aaron Jones really, really cheap. And because you can get him that cheap, I love that. I love that. I love that you can get Aaron Jones, plug him into a flex spot for flex spot prices. And then in the playoffs, he has 25-point potential. Obviously, it's a hamstring, so you have to be a little bit concerned about that and how long that's going to linger. With that being said, you're looking at what he did in 2022. He was very good. I'm comfortable buying Aaron Jones, and I'm going to leave you with our preseason darling.
Jackson, Smith, and Jigba. And the reason we're going to have him after Aaron Jones, which I completely agree with you on, is Aaron Jones has a very clear-cut path to producing at a high level. JSN, there's a lot of variables that have to happen for him to finally get the volume that we want for him to be a very impactful fantasy wide receiver in the second half of the year. One is Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf is going to have to get banged up and probably miss some games for JSN to really get a nice boost in consistent volume. And that's what we care about most in fantasy. When you see the targets that JSN has gotten over the last 3 weeks, 5 targets, 7 targets, 4 targets, the reason he's had 16 and 12 points over the last 2 weeks is because he's scored touchdowns in both of those games. Yes, we love JSN. Yes, we sold our souls for JSN in the offseason. We're not delusional. And we're going to be honest with ourselves here. This is not sustainable production. If this is what it takes for JSN to put up 16 points in a game, we're out on JSN. The reason we have him as a buy is because his opportunity is still going up. And he is getting better with the opportunities given.
I'll be 100% honest with you. I'm not buying JSN.
Okay.
If you still are, then it's great. But
So how cheap is he? Because a lot of people are considering dropping him. They were.
See, I don't think people are, and I think he still could be considered droppable right now with Tyler Lockett. Watching a lot of that game, every red zone, for the most part, every red zone target was to DK, and most of the other targets were to Tyler Lockett. I mean, Jason would have had 5 points in that game had it not been for that touchdown. And he still only had 12 points. And that was like in the last minute. So, I mean,
I kind of ended up talking myself out of it anyways, I guess.
Well, that's good that we're giving them honest content. So we're not buying JSN. There you go. That's why it was picked
we
last.
have him on the buys, I guess.
We do, but I just don't see a good reason to buy him.
If you're getting him as a throw-in or for free, I would say, take,
sure.
Take him
if you have
there.
a roster spot, he's on the waivers, or you get him as a throw-in, then buy
Look,
him.
I'll say this.
Because even
this is another one where you can make fun of me for saying that. I'm not jumping out of my pants to go get Jackson Smith and Jigba everywhere.
Why do you say that?
I really do. There's still, oh my gosh, dude. We're only halfway through the season.
I mean, but here's the other part about it.
We're only halfway through the season,
keep
and his
tabs
snap share is going up. His targets are going up.
Yes.
He has, I mean, on 7 targets, 4 receptions, 63 yards, and a touchdown. Like, that is solid. I mean, that's like what Gabe Davis does.
And to be fair, he played Cleveland last week.
I know.
Okay.
This is us talking ourselves into our off-season darling.
If you get Jason cheap, I would buy him.
He is, and I think that's
right.
That was the original point going into this. He's so dang cheap. He is so dang cheap.
Yeah.
He really is. And I don't think anyone in their right mind is going to look at this production over the last couple of weeks. They're going to say the same thing as us. They're going to say, well, the touchdown. If you take away the touchdown, what's he do? Yeah, not much.
Cleveland.
Right.
Cleveland's given up like the 3rd least points to wide receivers this year.
Right.
Look, you can tell we're human, right? Fantasy's fun. Drop a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Head over to flockfantasy.com/domain for all of our exclusive content, to join our Discord, and to get rest of season rankings and a bunch of other exclusive stuff. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and we will see you later.